Welcome, Wapham crew, guys, gals, ghouls, friends, fiends, foes, whoever may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. Climb aboard the mothership, secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It's Sunday, December 15th, Monday, December 16th for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm your host, TessaTNT, and we are broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight. So tonight is story time with me, TessaTNT, and I'm fixated on this whole drone thing. What the heck is going on? Did you see it was over the Pentagon? That's a new video that's come up. Different people that worked for the government before are stating certain different things, and it doesn't seem to be foreign. They haven't said if it's those damn Allens, but supposedly they're gathering information from whatever these drones are in certain neighborhoods. I guess they're scanning supposedly for nuclear stuff. I don't know. There's so many different theories out there and so many different people saying different things. It really does feel like a distraction. No, it's super weird. What do you think? Like, I don't know. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think is happening. And should we be tripping? Or should we remain calm? It's like, it's tripping me out, but at the same time, I'm unusually calm about it. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm pretty sure we'll be alright. But the whole underground thing last night on TikTok really got me thinking. Alright, so tonight we are reading Stephen King's Insomnia. Let me go ahead and put that banner up. Just in case, whoever comes in doesn't know what the heck we're doing. And yeah, make sure you subscribe. I don't know, I've been tossing around changing the startup time. I'm thinking I want to go later. So I'm thinking 7:30, maybe 8. I don't know. It's already hard enough to get people from the East Coast to come on the show, because when it's, let's see, 6 o'clock on the East Coast, it's 8 o'clock, or 6 o'clock here, it's 8 o'clock on the East Coast. Maybe I just need to find more, like, West Coast people to come onto the show. I do not know. Alright, so let's get into this, shall we? Okay, so previous to this, if you weren't here, Ralph had called 911 because he saw two weird guys on his neighbor's porch. They were bald, short, wearing looks like doctor's jackets or whatnot, and one of them was carrying a pair of scissors, but he denied that it was him, even to one of his buddies at the police department. But yeah, that's kind of the backup story for what happened last time, towards the end. You probably don't have any idea how old they were either. No. Could either of them have been our old pal from up the street? Ed, didn't you? Ralph looked at McGovern in surprise. No, neither one was Ed. What about Pickering? No, not Ed, not Charlie Pickering. I would have known either one of them. What are you driving at exactly? That my mind just sort of buckled and put the two guys who've caused me the most stress the last few months on May Wilker's front stoop? Oh, of course not, McGovern replied. But steady tap, tap, tap of the newspaper against his leg paused, and his eyes flickered. Ralph felt a sinking in the pit of his stomach. Yes, that was in fact exactly what McGovern had been driving at, and it wasn't really so surprising, was it? Maybe not, but it didn't change the sinking feeling. And Johnny said all the doors were locked. Yes, from the inside. But McGovern got up from his chair so suddenly that for one crazy moment, Ralph had the idea that he was going to run away, perhaps screaming, "Watch out for Roberts, he's gone crazy," as he went, but instead of bolting down the streets and the steps, he turned toward the door leading back into the house. In some ways, Ralph found this even more alarming. "What are you going to do?" "Call Larry Perrault," McGovern said. "May's younger brother. He still lives out in Cardville. She'll be buried in Cardville, I imagine." McGovern gave Ralph a strange, speculative look. "What did you think I was going to do?" "I don't know," Ralph said uneasily. "For a second there, I thought you were going to run away like the gingerbread man." "Nope." McGovern reached out and patted him on the shoulder. But to Ralph the gesture felt cold and comfortless. Perfunctory. What does Mrs. Loker's brother have to do with any of this? "Johnny said they sent May's body down to Augusta for a more comprehensive autopsy, right?" "Well, I think the word he actually used was post-mortem." McGovern waved this away. "Same difference, believe me. If anything odd does crop up, anything suggesting that she was murdered, Larry would have to be informed. He's her only close living relative." "Yes, but won't he wonder what you're interested in?" I'm just gonna check the sound really quick. Make sure we're bouncing. Oh, we're bouncing. "Yes, but won't he wonder what your interest is?" "Oh, I don't think we have to worry about that," McGovern said. Speaking in a soothing tone, Ralph didn't care for it at all. "I'll say the police have sealed off the house and that the old Harris Avenue rumor mill is turning briskly. He knows May and I were school chums and that I visited her regularly over the last couple of years. Larry and I aren't crazy about each other, but we get along reasonably well. He'll tell me what I want to know, if for no other reason than that we're both Cardville survivors. Get it?" "I guess so, but..." "I hope so," McGovern said, and suddenly he looked like a very old and very ugly reptile, a Gia monster, or perhaps a basilisk lizard. He pointed a finger at Ralph. "I'm not a stupid man, and I do know how to respect a confidence. Your face just now said you weren't sure about that, and I resent it. I resent the hell out of it." "I'm sorry," Ralph said. He was stunned by McGovern's outburst. McGovern looked at him a moment longer, with his leathery lips pulled back against his two large dentures, then nodded. "Yeah, okay, apology accepted. You've been sleeping like shit. I have to factor that into the equation, and as for me, I can't seem to get Bob Polhurst off my mind." He heaved one of the weightiest poor old bill sighs. "Well, listen, if you'd prefer me not to try calling May's brother..." No, Ralph said, thinking that what he'd like to do was roll the clock back 10 minutes or so and cancel this entire conversation. But I laughed about the dentures being too big, because my dad had to, before he passed, had to have all his teeth pulled, and then he went in for dentures, and oh my goodness. This program paid for it was called The Friend of Man. And I remember picking him up from the dentist. I used to take him to the store all the time and stuff, but then he finally got his dentures, and he went and got them from the dentist, and when he came out and smiled, I laughed so hard because that wasn't his teeth, and he looked like he had Ewok teeth. That is how bad this dentist was. Man, I wish I remember his name. I know the location, but man, I felt bad for my dad on that part. But yeah, that just reminded me of it when I read that. Right. And then a sentiment he was sure Bill McGovern would appreciate floated into his mind, fully constructed and ready to use. "I'm sorry if I impunged your discretion." McGovern smiled, reluctantly at first, and then with his whole face. Now I know what keeps you awake, thinking up crap like that. Sit still, Ralph, and think good thoughts about a hippopotamus, as my mother used to say. I'll be right back. Probably won't even catch him in, funeral arrangements and all that. Want to look at the paper while you wait? Sure, thanks. McGovern handed him the paper, which still retained the tube shape into which it had been rolled. Then went inside. Ralph glanced at the front page. The headline read, "Pro-choice, pro-life, advocates ready for activist arrival." The story was flanked by two news photographs. One showed half a dozen young women making signs which said things like, "Our bodies, our choice," and "It's a brand new day in dairy." The other showed picketers marching from in front of Woman Care. They carried no signs and needed none. The hooded black robes they wore and the size they carried said it all. Ralph heaved a sigh of his own, dropped the paper onto the seat of the rocking chair beside him, and watched Tuesday morning unfold along Harris Avenue. It occurred to him that McGovern might well be on the phone with John Lydecker rather than Larry Perrault, and that the two of them might, at this very moment, be having a little student-teacher conference about that nutty old insomniac, Ralph Roberts. "Just thought you'd like to know who really made that 911 call, Johnny." "Thanks, Professor. We were pretty sure anyway, but it's good to get the confirmation. I imagine he's harmless. I actually sort of like him." Ralph pushed away his speculations about who Bill might or might not be calling. It was easier just to sit here and not think at all, not even good thoughts about a hippopotamus. Easier to watch the Budweiser truck lumber into Red Apple parking lot, pausing to give courtesy to the Magazine's Incorporated van, which had dropped off this week's nation of tabloids, magazines, and paperbacks, and was now leaving. "Sorry, I just saw a thing come up on my phone. A drone went down in New Jersey. I heard that before, but I wonder if it's a new one. And why are they still there? It's so freaking weird. Sorry, guys." Alright. Easier to watch old Harriet Binnigan, who made Mrs. Perrine look like a spring chicken, bent over her walker in her bright red fall coat out of her morning lunch, aka lurch. Easier to watch the young girl who was wearing jeans, an oversized white t-shirt, and a man's hat about 4 sizes too big for her, jumping rope in the weedy vacant lot between Frank's Bakery and Vicky Moon's tanning salon. Body wraps are specialty. Easier to watch the girl's small hands penduluming up and down. Easier to listen as she chanted her endless, shuttling rhyme. 3, 6, 9, the goose drink wine. Some distant part of Ralph's mind realized, with great astonishment, that he was on the verge of going to sleep as he sat here on the porch steps. At the same time this was happening, the auras were creeping into the world again, filling it with fabulous colors and motions. It was wonderful, but something was wrong with it. Something what? The girl jumping rope in the vacant lot? She was wrong. Her denim-clad legs pumped up and down like the bobbin of a sewing machine. Her shadow jumped next to her on the jumbled pavement of an ancient alley overgrown with weeds and sunflowers. The rope whirled up and down, all around, up and down and all around. Not an oversized t-shirt, though. He'd been wrong about that. The figure was wearing a smock, a white smock, like the kind worn by the actors in the old TV doc operas. 3, 6, 9, hun, the goose drink wine. The monkey chewed tobacco on the streetcar line. A cloud blocked the sun, and a grim light sailed across the day, driving it underwater. Ralph's skin first chilled, then broke out in goosebumps. The girl's pumping shadow disappeared. She looked up at Ralph, and he saw she wasn't a little girl at all. The creature looked at him, and it was a man about 4 feet tall. Ralph had first taken the hat-shadowed face for that of a child because it was utterly smooth, unmarked by so much as a single line, and yet despite that it conveyed a clear feeling to Ralph, a sense of evil, of malignity beyond the comprehension of a sane mind. That's it, Ralph thought numbly, staring at the skipping creature. That's exactly it. Whatever the thing over there is, it's insane, totally gone. The creature might have read Ralph's thought, for at that moment its lips skinned back in a grin that was both coy and nasty, as if the two of them shared some unpleasant secret. And he was sure, yes, quite sure, almost positive, that it was somehow chanting through its grin, doing it without moving its lips in the slightest. The line broke, the monkey got choked, and they all died together in a little rowboat. Hey, brother. It was neither of the two little bald doctors Ralph had seen coming out of Mrs. Loker's. He was almost positive of that. Related to them, maybe, but not the same. It was the creature threw its jump rope away. The rope turned first yellow and then red, seeming to give off sparks as it flew through the air. The small figure, Doc Number 3, stared at Ralph, grinning, and Ralph suddenly realized something else. Something which filled him with horror. He finally recognized the hat the creature was wearing. It was Bill McGovern's missing Panama. Section 4. Again, it was as if the creature had read his mind. It dragged the hat from its head, revealing the round, hairless skull beneath, and waved McGovern's Panama in the air, as if it were a cowpoke astride a bucking bronco. It continued to grin its unspeakable grin as it waved the hat. Suddenly it pointed at Ralph as if marking him. Then it clapped the hat back on its head and darted into the narrow weed choke opening between the tanning salon and the bakery. The sun sailed through the free of the cloud which had covered it, and the shifting brightness of the auras began to fade once more. A moment or two after the creature had disappeared, it was just Harris Avenue in front of him again. Boring old Harris Avenue, the same as always. Ralph pulled a shuddering breath, remembering the madness in that small grinning face, remembering the way it had pointed. The monkey got choked at him as if they all died together in a little rowboat, marking him. "Tell me if I fell asleep," he whispered hoarsely. "Tell me I fell asleep and dreamed that little bugger." The door opened behind him. "Oh, my talking to yourself, Ollie?" McGovern said. "Must have money in the bank, Ralphie." "Yeah, about enough to cover my burial expenses," Ralph said. To himself, he sounded like a man who had just suffered a terrible shock and is still trying to cope with the residual fright. He half expected Bill to dart forward, face filling with concern, or maybe just suspicion, to ask what was wrong. McGovern did nothing of the sort. He plumped into the rocking chair, crossed his arms over his narrow chest in the brooding X, and looked at Harris Avenue, the stage upon which he and Ralph and Lois and Dorrance Marsteller and so many other old folks, we golden agers, in McGovern S, were destined to play out their often boring and sometimes painful last acts. Suppose I told him about his hat, Ralph thought. Suppose I'd just opened the conversation by saying, "Bill, I also know what happened to your Panama. Some badass relation to the guys I saw last night has got it. He wears it when he jumps rope between the bakery and the tanning salon." If Bill had any lingering doubts about his sanity, that little newsflash would certainly set them to rest. Yep. Ralph kept his mouth shut. "Sorry I was gone so long," McGovern said. "Larry claimed I was caught catching him going out the door to the funeral parlor, but before I could ask him any questions and get away, he'd rehashed half of Mary's life and damn near all of his own, talked nonstop for 45 minutes. Positive this was an exaggeration. McGovern had surely been gone 5 minutes tops. Ralph glanced at his watch and was astounded to see it was 11:15. He looked up the street and saw that Mrs. Bennigan had disappeared. So had the Budweiser truck. Had he been asleep? It seemed that he must have been. But he could not for the life of him find the break in his conscious perceptions. "Oh, come on, don't be dense. You were sleeping when you saw the little bald guy, dreamed the little bald guy." That made perfect sense. Even the fact that it had been wearing Bill's Panama made sense. The same hat had shown up on his nightmare about Carolyn. It had been between Rosalie's paws and that one. Except this time he hadn't been dreaming. He was sure of it. Well, almost sure. Aren't you going to ask me what May's brother said? McGovern sounded slightly piqued. Sorry, said Ralph. I was wool-gathering, I guess. Given my son, provided you listen closely, from here on out, that is, the detective in charge of the case. Funderburk. Pretty sure it's Utterback. Steve Utterback. McGovern waved his hand airily, his most common response to being corrected on some point. Whatever, anyway, he called Larry and said the autopsy showed nothing but natural causes. The thing they were most concerned about, in light of your call, was that May had been scared into a heart attack, literally frightened to death, by housebreakers. The doors being locked from the inside and the lack of missing valuables militated against that, of course, but they took your call seriously enough to investigate the possibility. His half-reproachful tone, as if Ralph had wantonly poured glue into the gears of some usually smooth-running machine, made Ralph feel impatient. Of course they took it seriously. I saw two guys leaving her house and reported it to the authorities. When they got there, they found the lady dead. How could they not take it seriously? Why didn't you give your name when you made the call? Well, I don't know. What difference does it make? And how in God's name can they be sure she wasn't scared into a heart attack? I don't know if they can be 100% sure, McGovern said, now sounding a bit testy himself. I guess it must be close to that if they're turning May's body over to her brother for burial. It's probably a blood test of some kind. All I know is that this guy, Funderburk, Utterback, told Larry that May probably died in her sleep. McGovern crossed his legs, fiddled the creases in his blue slacks, then gave Ralph a clear and piercing look. I'm going to give you some advice, so listen up. Go to the doctor. Now, today. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go directly to Litchfield. This is getting heavy. This one's I saw coming out of Mrs. Loker's. Didn't see me, but this one did, Ralph thought. It saw me and it pointed at me. For all I know, it might actually have been looking for me. No, there was a nice paranoid thought. Ralph, did you hear what I said? Yes, I take it you don't believe I actually saw anyone coming out of Mrs. Loker's house? You take it right. I saw the look on your face just now when I told you I'd been gone 45 minutes, and I also saw the way you looked at your watch. You didn't believe so much time had passed, did you? And the reason you didn't believe it is because you dozed off without even being aware of it. Had yourself a little pocket nap. That's probably what happened to you the other night. Only the other night you dreamed up those two guys, and the dream was so real you called 911 when you woke up. Doesn't that make sense? 3, 6, 9, Ralph thought. The goose drank. Fine. What about the binoculars? He asked. They're still sitting on the table beside my chair in the living room. Don't they prove I was awake? I don't see how. Maybe you were sleepwalking? Have you thought about that? You say you saw these intruders, but you can't really describe them. Those orange high-intensity lights. All the doors locked from inside, just the same, and these auras you talked about. The insomnia is causing them. I'm almost sure of it. Still, it could be more serious than that. Ralph got up, walked down the porch steps, and stood at the head of the walk, with his back to McGovern. There was a throbbing at his temples, and his heart was beating hard. Too hard. He didn't just point. I was right the first time. The little son of a bitch marked me. And he was no dream. Neither were the ones I saw coming out of Mrs. Loker's, I'm sure of it. Of course you are, Ralph, another voice replied. Crazy people are always sure of the crazy things they see and hear. That's what makes them crazy, not the hallucinations themselves. If you really saw what you saw, what happened to Mrs. Bennigan, what happened to the Budweiser truck, how did you lose the 45 minutes McGovern spent on the phone with Larry Perrault? You're experiencing very serious symptoms, McGovern said from behind him, and Ralph thought he heard something terrible in the man's voice. Satisfaction. could it possibly be satisfaction? One of them had a pair of scissors, Ralph said without turning around. I saw them. Come on, Ralph, think. Use that brain of yours and think. On Sunday afternoon, less than 24 hours before you're due to have acupuncture treatment, a lunatic nearly sticks a knife into you. Is it any wonder that your mind serves up a nightmare featuring a sharp object that night? Hans' pins and Pickering's hunting knife became scissors, that's all. Don't you see that this hypothesis covers all the bases, while what you claim to see, or have seen, covers none of them? And I was sleepwalking when I got the binoculars, that's what you think. It's possible, even likely. Same thing with the spray can in my jacket pocket, right? Old door didn't have a thing to do with it. I don't care about the spray can, or Old door, McGovern cried. I care about you. You've been suffering from insomnia since April or May. You've been depressed and disturbed ever since Carolyn died. I have not been depressed, Ralph shouted across the street. The mailman paused and looked in their direction before going on down the block toward the park. Have it your way, McGovern said. You haven't been depressed. You also haven't been sleeping. You're seeing auras, guys creeping out of locked houses in the middle of the night, and then, in a deceptively light voice, McGovern said the thing Ralph had been dreading all along. You want to watch out, old son. You're starting to sound too much like Ed DeNew for comfort. Ralph turned around. Dull, hot blood pounded behind his face. Why are you being this way? Why are you taking after me this way? I'm not taking after you, Ralph. I'm trying to help you. To be your friend. That's not how it feels. Well, sometimes the truth hurts a little, McGovern said calmly. You need to at least consider the idea that your mind and body are trying to tell you something. Let me ask you a question. Is this the only disturbing dream you've had lately? Ralph thought fleetingly of Carol, buried up to her neck in the sand and screaming about white man tracks. Thought of the bugs which had flooded out of her head. I haven't had any bad dreams lately, he said stiffly. Suppose you don't believe that because it doesn't fit into the little scenario you've created. Ralph, let me ask you something. Do you really believe that my seeing those two men and May Loker turning up dead was just a coincidence? Well, maybe not. Maybe your physical and emotional upset created conditions favorable to a brief but perfectly genuine psychic event. Ralph was silenced. Hi, Galen. I believe such things do happen from time to time, McGovern said, standing up. Probably sounds funny coming from a rational old bird like me, but I do. I'm not out and out saying that this is what happened, but it could have been. What I am sure of is that the two men you think you saw did not in fact exist in the real world. Ralph stood looking up at McGovern with his hands jammed deep into his pockets and clenched into fists so hard and tight that they felt like little rocks. He could feel the muscles in his arms thrumming. Ralph stood looking up at McGovern with his hands jammed deep into his pockets. McGovern came down the porch steps, and he took him by the arm, gently, just above the elbow. I only think... Ralph pulled his arm away so sharply that McGovern grunted with surprise and stumbled a little on his feet. I know what you think. You're not hearing what I... Okay, I've heard plenty. More than enough, believe me. And excuse me, I think I'm going for another walk. I need to clear my head. He could feel dull hot blood pounding away in his cheeks and brow. He tried to throw his brain into some forward gear that would allow it to leave his senseless, impotent rage behind, and couldn't do it. He felt a lot as if he had been awakened from the dream of Carolyn. His thoughts roared with terror and confusion. And as he started his legs moving, the sense he got was not one of walking but of falling, as he had fallen out of bed yesterday morning. Still, he kept going. Sometimes that was all you could do. Ralph, you need to see a doctor, McGovern called after him, and Ralph could no longer tell himself that he didn't hear a weird, shrewish pleasure in McGovern's voice. The concern which overlaid it was probably genuine enough, but it was like sweet icing on a sour cake. Not a pharmacist, not a hypnotist, not an acupuncturist. You need to see your own family doctor. Yeah, the guy who buried my wife below the high tide line, he thought, in the kind of mental scream. The guy who stuck her in sand up to her neck and then told her she didn't have to worry about drowning as long as she kept taking her Valium and Tylenol 3. aloud he said, "I need to take a walk. That's what I need, and that's all I need." His heartbeat was now slamming into his temples like the short, hard brows of a sledgehammer. And it occurred to him that this was how strokes must happen. If he didn't control himself soon, he was apt to fall down with what his father had called a bad temper apoplexy. Apoplexy. He could hear McGovern coming down the walk after him. "Don't touch me, Bill," Ralph thought. "Don't even put your hand on my shoulder, because I'm probably going to turn around and slug you if you do." "I'm trying to help you, don't you see that?" McGovern shouted. The mailman on the other side of the street had stopped again to watch them, and outside the Red Apple, Carl, the guy who worked mornings, and Sue, the young woman who worked afternoons, were gawking frankly across the street at them. Carl, he saw, had a bag of hamburger buns in one hand. It was really sort of amazing, the things you saw at a time like this, although not as amazing as some of the things he had already seen that morning. "The things you thought you saw, Ralph, a traitor," the voice whispered, softly from deep inside his head. "Walk," Ralph muttered desperately. "Just a damn walk." A mind movie had begun to play in his head. It was an unpleasant one, the sort of film he rarely went to see, even if he had been seeing anything else that was playing at the cinema center. The soundtrack to this mental horror flick seemed to be Pop Goes the Weasel, of all things. "Let me tell you something, Ralph. At our age, mental illness is common. At our age, it's common as hell, so go see your doctor." Mrs. Bennigan was now standing on her stoop, her walker abandoned at the foot of the front steps. She was still wearing her bright red fall coat, and her mouth appeared to be hanging open as she stared down the street at them. "Do you hear me, Ralph? I hope you do. I just hope you do." Ralph walked faster, hunching his shoulders as if against a cold wind. "Suppose he just keeps on yelling louder and louder. Suppose he follows me right up the street. If he does that, people will think he's the one who's gone crazy." This is what he told himself, but this idea had no power to soothe him. In his mind, he continued to hear a piano playing a children's tune. No, not really playing, picking it out in nursery school plinks and plonks. "All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought 'twas all in fun. Pop goes the weasel." And now Ralph began to see the old people of Harris Avenue, the ones who bought their insurance from companies that advertised on cable TV, the ones with gallstones and skin tumors, the ones whose memories were diminishing even as their prostates enlarged, the ones who were living on Social Security and peering at the world through thickening cataracts instead of rose-colored glasses. These were the people who now read all the mail which came addressed to occupant, and scanned the supermarket advertising circulars for specials on canned goods and generic frozen dinners. He saw them dressing in grotesque short pants and fluffy short skirts, saw them wearing beanies and T-shirts which showcased such characters as Beavis and Butthead and Rude Dog. He saw them, in short, as the world's oldest preschoolers. They were marching around a double row of chairs as a small bald man in a white smock played Pop Goes the Weasel on the piano. Another badly cliched filched the chairs one by one, and when the music stopped and everyone sat down, one person this time had been May Loker. Next time it would probably be McGovern's old department head was left standing. Person would have to leave the room, of course, and Ralph heard McGovern laughing because he'd found a seat again. Maybe May Loker was dead, Bob Polhurst dying, Ralph Roberts losing his marbles, but he was still all right. William D. McGovern, Esquire, was still fine, still dandy, still vertical and taking nourishment, still able to find a chair when the music stopped. Ralph walked faster still, shoulders hunched ever higher, anticipating another fusillade of advice and admonition. He thought it unlikely that McGovern would actually follow him up the street, but not entirely out of the question. If McGovern was angry enough, he might do just that, remonstrating, telling Ralph to stop fooling around and go to the doctor. reminding him that the piano could stop any time, any old time at all, and if he didn't find a chair while the finding was good, he might be out of luck forever. No more shouts came, however. He thought of looking back to see where McGovern was, then thought better of it. If he saw Ralph looking back, it might set him off all over again. Best to just keep going, so Ralph lengthened his stride, heading back in the direction of the airport again without even thinking about it, walking with his head down, trying not to hear the relentless piano, trying not to see the old children marching around the chairs, trying not to see the terrified eyes above their make-believe smiles. It came to him as he walked that his hopes had been denied. He had been pushed into the tunnel after all, and the dark was all around him. Part 2. The Secret City. World men ought to be explorers. T.S. Eliot, 4 quarters. There's a picture here on this page, which is 308, which shows, looks like a man and a woman. You can't see their head and shoulders, but you can see what they're wearing and their shoes, and then you see a scotch thing on the ground in chalk. Chapter 11. The Dairy of the Old Crocs was not the only secret city existing quietly within the place Ralph Roberts had always thought of as home. As a boy growing up in Merry Mead were the various old Cape housing developments which stood today. Ralph had discovered there was, in addition to the dairy that belonged to the grown-ups, one that belonged strictly to the children. There were the abandoned hobo jungles near the railroad depot in Nebolt Street, where one could sometimes find tomato soup cans half full of mulligatawny stew and bottles with a swallow or two of beer left in them. There was the alley behind the Aladdin Theater, where Bull Durham cigarettes were smoked and Black Cat firecrackers sometimes set off. There was the big old elm, which overhung the river, where scores of boys and girls had learned to dive. There were the 100, or perhaps it was closer to 200, tangled trails winding through the Barrens, an overgrown valley which slashed through the center of town like a badly healed scar. These secret streets and highways in hiding were all below the adults, plain of vision, and were consequently overlooked by them. Although there had been exceptions, one of them had been a cop named Aloysius Nell, Mr. Nell, to generations of dairy children. And it was only now, as he walked up toward the picnic area near the place where Harris Avenue became the Harris Avenue extension, that it occurred to Ralph that Chris Nell was probably old Nell's son, except that couldn't be quite right, because the cop Ralph had first seen in the company of John Lydecker wasn't old enough to be old Mr. Nell's son, grandson more like it. Ralph had become aware of a second secret city, one that longed to be the old folks around the time he retired, but he hadn't fully realized that he himself was a citizen of it until after Carol's death. What he had discovered then was a submerged geography eerily similar to the one that he had known as a child, a place largely ignored by the hurry-to-work, hurry-to-play world which thumped and hustled all around it. The Dairy of the Old Crocs overlapped yet a third secret city, the Dairy of the Damned, a terrible place inhabited mostly by winos, runaways, and lunatics who could not be kept locked up. It was in the picnic area that Lafayette Chapin had introduced Ralph to one of life's most important considerations. Once you'd become a bona fide old croc, that was. This consideration had to do with one's real life. The subject had come up while the two men were just getting to know one another. Ralph had asked Fay what he had done before he started coming out to the picnic area. "Well, in my real life, I was a carpenter and fancy cabinet maker," Chapin had replied. exposing his remaining teeth in a wide grin, but all that ended almost 10 years ago. As if Ralph remembered thinking retirement was something like a vampire's kiss, pulling those who survived it into the world of the undead. And when you got right down to cases, was that really so far off the mark? Section 2. With McGovern safely behind him, at least he hoped so, Ralph stepped through the screen of mixed oak and maple which shielded the picnic area from the extension. He saw that 8 or 9 people had drifted in since his earlier walk, most with bag lunches or coffee pot sandwiches. The Everleys and the Zells were playing hearts with a greasy deck of top-hole cards, which was kept stashed in a knothole of a nearby oak. Faye and Doc Mulhair, a retired vet, were playing chess, a couple of kibitzers wandering back and forth between the two games. Games were what the picnic area was about, what most of the places in Derry of the old Crocs were about, but Ralph thought the games were really just framework. What people actually came here for was to touch base, to report in, to confirm, if only themselves, that they were still living some kind of life, real or otherwise. Ralph sat on an empty bench near the cyclone fence and traced one finger absently over the engraved carvings, names, initials, lots of fuck yous. As he watched planes land at orderly 2-minute intervals, a Cessna, a Piper, an Apache, a twin Bonanza, the 11:45 Air Express out of Boston. He kept one ear cocked to the ebb and the flow of conversation behind him. Maylooker's name was mentioned more than once. She had been known by several of these people, and the general opinion seemed to be that Mrs. Perrine's, that God had finally shown mercy and ended her suffering. Most of the talk today, however, concerned the impending visit of Susan Day. As a rule, politics wasn't much of a conversational draw with old Crocs. I preferred the good bowel cancer or stroke any day, but even out here the abortion issue exercised its singular ability to engage, inflame, and divide. She picked a bad town to come to, and the hell of it is, I doubt she knows it, Doc Mulhair said, watching the chessboard with glum concentration as Faye Chapin blitzkrieged his king's remaining defenders. Things have a way of happening here. Remember the fire at the Black Spot, Faye? Faye grunted and captured the Doc's remaining bishop. What I don't understand is these cootie bugs, Lisa Zill said, picking up the front section of the news from the picnic table and slapping the photograph of the hooded figures marching in front of woman care. It's like they want to go back to the days when women gave themselves abortions with coat hangers. That's what they do want, Georgina Everly said. They figure if a woman's scared enough of dying, she'll have the baby. It never seems to cross their minds that a woman can be more sacred and scared of having a kid than using a coat hanger to get rid of it. What does being afraid have to do with it? One of the kibitzers, a shovel-faced oldster named Pedersen, asked truculently. Murder is murder, whether the baby's inside or outside. That's the way I look at it. Even when they're so small you need a microscope to see them, it's still murder. Because they'd be kids if you let them alone. I guess that just about makes you Adolf Eichmann every time you jerk off, Faye said, and moved his queen. Check. Lafayette Chapin, Lisa Zell cried. Playing with yourself ain't the same at all, Pedersen said, glowering. Oh no? Wasn't there some guy in the Bible got cursed by God for hammering the old haddock? The other kibitzers asked. You're probably thinking of Onan, said a voice from behind Ralph. He turned, startled, and saw old Dor standing there. In one hand he held a paperback with a number 5 on the cover. Where the hell did you come from? Ralph wondered. He could almost have sworn there had been no one standing behind him a minute or so before. Onan Schmonen, Penderson said. Those sperms aren't the same as a baby. No, they asked. Then why ain't the Catholic Church selling rubbers at bingo games? Tell me that. That's just ignorant, Pedersen said. And if you don't see, but it wasn't just masturbation Onus was punished for, Dorrance said, in his high, penetrating old man's voice. He was punished for refusing to impregnate his brother's widow so his brother's line could continue. There's a poem by Allen Ginsberg, I think. Shut up, you old fool, Penderson yelled, and then glowered at Faye Chapin. If you don't see that there's a big difference between a man beating his meat and a woman flushing the baby, God put her in her belly down the toilet. You're as big a fool as he is. This is disgusting conversation, Lisa Nell said, sounding more fascinated than disgusted. Ralph looked over her shoulder and saw a section of chain-link fencing that had been torn loose from its post and bent backward, probably by the kids who took this place over at night. That solved one mystery anyway. He hadn't noticed Torrance because the old man hadn't been in the picnic area at all. He'd been wandering around the airport grounds. It occurred to Ralph that this was his chance to grab Dorrance and maybe get some answers out of him, except that Ralph would likely end up more confused than ever. Old Dor was too much like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, more smile than substance. Big difference, huh? Faye was asking Pedersen. Yeah, red patches glowing, Penderson's chapped cheeks. Doc O'Hare shifted uneasily in his seat. Look, let's just forget it and finish the game, Faye, all right? Faye took no notice. His attention was still fixed on Penderson. Maybe you ought to think about all the little spermies that died in the palm of your hand every time you sat on the toilet seat thinking about how nice it'd be to have Marilyn Monroe cop your... Penderson reached out and slapped the remaining chess pieces off the board. Doc O'Hare winced backward, mouth trembling, eyes wide, and frightened behind pink-rimmed glasses, which had been mended in 2 places with electrical tape. Yeah, good, Faye shouted. It's a very reasonable fucking argument, you geek. Penderson raised his fists in an exaggerated John L. Sullivan pose. Want to do something about it? He asked. Come on, let's go. He got slowly to his feet. He stood easily a foot taller than the shovel-faced Pedersen and outweighed him by at least 60 pounds. Ralph could hardly believe what he was seeing, and if the poison had seeped this far, what about the rest of the city? It seemed to him that Doc O'Hare was right. Susan Day must not have the slightest idea of how bad an idea bringing her act to Derry really was. In some ways, in a lot of ways actually, Derry wasn't like other places. He was moving before he was consciously aware of what he meant to do, and he was relieved to see Stan Eberly doing the same thing. They exchanged a glance as they approached the 2 men standing nose to nose, and Stan nodded slightly. Ralph slipped an arm around Faye's shoulders a bare second before Stan gripped Pedersen's upper left arm. You ain't doing none of that, Stan said, speaking directly into one of Pedersen's tucked ears. We'll end up taking the both of you over to Derry Home with heart attacks, and you don't need another one of those, Harley. You had 2 already. Or is it 3? I ain't letting him make jokes about women murdering babies, Pedersen said, and Ralph saw that there were tears rolling down the man's cheeks. My wife died having our second daughter. Sepsis carried her off back in '46, so I ain't having that talk about murdering babies. Christ, Faye said in a different voice. I didn't know that. Harley, I'm sorry. Figure sorry, Pedersen cried and ripped his arm out of Stan Eberly's grip. He lunged toward Faye, who raised his fist and then lowered them again as Pedersen went blundering past without looking at him. He took the path through the trees, which led back out to the extension, and was gone. What followed his departure was 30 seconds of pure shocked silence, broken only by the wasp whine of an incoming Piper Club. Well, on that note, boys and girls, we are going to go to our first music break. On this break, we have the lovely and talented Miss Mia Savage with her group Antidote for Savages, and she will be singing Our New Reality, Let Me Be Your Home, The Miriam Crypto, and Your Skeleton. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
shit that he brings anymore. You're mine. You're mine. Tonight. You're mine. I remember
Welcome back, and thanks so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Freaking weird. Sorry, there's a fly flying around. Flies are not alive right now, so what the heck? Where the hell did you come from? Now he disappeared. Weird. Creepy. Alright, we're going to section 3 of Stephen King's Insomnia. Jesus, Faye said at last. You see a guy every few days or 5, 10 years, and you start to think you know everything. Christ, Ralphie. I didn't know how his wife died. I feel like a fool. Don't let it get you down, Stan said. He's probably just having his monthlies. Shut up, Georgina said. We've had enough dirty talk for one morning. I'll be glad when the day comes, when women comes and goes and things and can get back to normal, Fredzel said. Doc Moliere was down on his hands and knees collecting chess pieces. Do you want to finish, Faye? He asked. I think I remember where they all were. No, Faye said. His voice, which had remained steady during the confrontation with Pedersen, now sounded trembling. Think I've had enough for a while. Maybe Ralph, give you a little tourney, pretty Lynn? Think I'm going to pass, Ralph said. He was looking around for Dorrance and at last spotted him. He had gone back through the hole in the fence. He was standing in knee-high grass at the edge of the service road over there, bending his book back and forth in his hands as he watched the Piper Cub taxi toward the General Aviation Terminal. Ralph found himself remembering how Ed had come tearing along that service road in his old brown Datsun and how he had sworn, hurry up, you lick shit, at the slowness of the gate. For the first time in over a year, he found himself wondering what Ed had been doing in there to begin with. Then you did, huh? He made an effort and focused on Faye again. I said you must be sleeping again because you look a hell of a lot better than you did. But now your hearing's going to hell, I guess. Well, I guess so, Ralph said, and tried a little smile. Think I'll go grab myself a little lunch. You want to come, Faye? My treat. Nah, I already had a coffee pot, Faye said. It's sitting in my gut like a piece of lead right now. To tell you the truth. Jeez, Ralph. The old fart was crying. Did you see that? Yes, but I wouldn't make it into a big deal if I were you, Ralph said. He started walking toward the extension, and Faye ambled along beside him. With his broad shoulders slumped and his head lowered, Faye looked quite a lot like a trained bear in a man-suit. Guys our age cry over just about anything. You know that. I suppose. He gave Ralph a grateful smile. Anyway, thanks for stopping me before I could, make it worse. You know how I am sometimes. I only wish someone had been there when Bill and I got into it, Ralph thought. Out loud he said, No problem. It's me that should be thanking you, actually. There's something else to put on my resume when I apply for that high-paying job at the UN. Faye laughed delighted and clapped Ralph on the shoulder. Yeah, Secretary General, Peacemaker #1. You could do it, Ralph. No shit. No question about it, buddy. Take care of yourself, Faye. He started to turn away and Faye touched his arm. You're still up for the tournament next week, aren't you? The Runway 3 Classic? It took a moment for Ralph to figure out what he was talking about. Although it had been the retired carpenter's main topic of conversation ever since the leaves had begun to show color. They had been putting on the chess tournament he called the Runway 3 Classic ever since the end of his life. Real life in 1984. The trophy was an oversized chrome hubcap with a fancy crown and scepter engraved on it. Faye, easily the best player among the old crocs, on the west side of town at least, had awarded the trophy to himself on 6 of the 9 occasions it had been given out, and Ralph had a suspicion that he had gone in the tank and the other 3 times just to keep the rest of the tourney participants interested. Ralph hadn't thought much about chess this fall. He'd had other things on his mind. Sure, he said. I guess I'll be playing. Faye grinned. Good. We should have had it last week, and that was the schedule, but I was hoping that if I put it off, Jimmy V will be able to play. He's still in the hospital, though, and if I put it off any longer, it'll be too cold to play outdoor, and we'll end up in the back of Duffy Prague's barbershop like we did in '90. What's wrong with Jimmy V? Cancer come back on him again, Faye said, then added in a lower tone, I don't think he's got a snowball's chance in hell of beating it this time. Ralph felt a sudden and surprisingly sharp pang of sorrow at this news. He and Jimmy Vandermeer had known each other well their own lives, real lives. Both had been on the road back then, Jimmy and candy, and greeting cards, Ralph on printing supplies and paper products, and the two of them had gotten on well enough to team up on several New England tours, splitting the driving and sharing rather more luxurious accommodations than either could have afforded alone. They had also shared the lonely, unremarkable secrets of traveling men. Jimmy told Ralph about the whore who'd stolen his wallet in 1958, and how he'd lied to his wife about it, telling her that a hitchhiker had robbed him. Ralph told Jimmy about this realization at the age of 43, that he had become a turpin hydrate junkie, and about his painful, ultimately successful struggle to kick the habit. He had no more told Carolyn about this bizarre cough syrup addiction than Jimmy V had told his wife about his last B-girl. A lot of trips, a lot of changed tires, a lot of jokes about the traveling salesman and the farmer's beautiful daughter, a lot of late-night talks which had gone on until the small hours of the morning. Sometimes it was God they had talked about, sometimes the IRS. All in all, Jimmy Vandermeer had been a damn good pal. Then Ralph had gotten his desk job with the printing company and fallen out of touch with Jimmy. He'd only begun to reconnect out here, and at a few of the other dim landmarks which dotted the dairy of the old Crocs. The library, the pool hall, the back room of Duffy Sprague's barbershop, 4 or 5 others. When Jimmy told him, shortly after Carolyn's death, that he had come through a bout with cancer, a lung shy but otherwise okay, what Ralph had remembered was the man talking baseball or fishing as he fed smoldering camel stubs into the split stream rushing by the wing window of the car, or after another. I got lucky, was what he said. Me and the Duke, we both got lucky. Except neither of them had stayed lucky, it seemed. Not that anyone did, in the end. Oh, man, Ralph said. I'm sorry to hear that. He's been in dairy home almost 3 weeks now, Faye said, having those radiation treatments and getting injections of poison that's supposed to kill the cancer while it's half killing you. I'm surprised you didn't know, Ralph. I suppose you are, but I'm not. The insomnia keeps swallowing stuff, you see. One day it's the last cup of soup envelope you lose track of. Next day it's your sense of time. The day after that, it's your old friends. Faye shook his head. Fucking cancer. It's spooky how it waits. Ralph nodded, now thinking of Carolyn. What room's Jimmy in, do you know? Maybe I'll go visit him. Just so happens I do. It's 3:15. Think you can remember it? Ralph grinned. For a while, anyway. Go see him if you can, sure. They got him pretty doped up, but he still knows who comes in, and I bet he'd love to see you. Him and you had a lot of high old times together. He told me once. Well, you know, Ralph said. A couple of guys on the road, that's all. If we flipped for the check, or in some diner, Jimmy V always called tails. Suddenly, he felt like crying. Lousy, ain't it? Faye said quietly. Yes. Well, you go see him. He'll be glad that you did, and you'll feel better. That's how it's supposed to work anyway. And don't you go and forget the damn chess tournament. Faye finished, straightening up and making a heroic effort to look and sound cheerful. If you step out now, you'll fuck up the seedings. I'll do my best. Yeah, I know you will. He made a fist and punched Ralph's upper arm lightly. And thanks again for stopping me before I could do something. You know, I'd feel pretty bad about it later. Sure, you know, peacemaker number 1, that's me. Ralph started down the path, which led to the extension, then turned back. You see that service road over there? The one that goes from general aviation out to the street? He pointed. A catering truck was currently driving away from the private terminal, its windshield reflecting bright darts of sunlight into their eyes. The truck stopped just short of the gate. Breaking the electric ivy, the gate began to trundle open. Sure I do, Faye said. Well, last summer I saw Ed Dipnew using that road, which means he had a key card to the gate. Any idea how he would have come by a thing like that? You know, the Friends of Life guy, lab scientist who did a little research in wife beating last summer? Ralph nodded. But it's the summer of '92 I'm talking about. He was driving an old brown Datsun. Faye laughed. I wouldn't know a Datsun from a Toyota from a Honda, Ralph. I stopped being able to tell cars apart around the time Chevrolet came up and gave up the Gullwig tail fins, but I can tell you who mostly uses that road. Caterers, mechanics, pilots, crew, and flight controllers. Some passengers have key cards. I think if they fly private a lot, the only scientists over there are the ones who work the air testing station. Is that the kind of scientist he is? Played with white rats, he did. Well, there aren't any rats over there at the airport, that I know of anyway, but now that I think of it, there is one other bunch of people who use that gate. Oh, who? Faye pointed at the prefab building with a corrugated tin roof standing about 70 yards from the general aviation terminal. See that building? That's Solotech. What's Solotech? A school, Faye said. I teach people to fly. Section 4. Ralph walked back down Harris Avenue with his big hands stuffed into his pockets and his head lowered, so he did not see much more than the cracks in the sidewalk passing beneath his sneakers. His mind was fixed on Ed Dipnew again, and on Solotech. He had no way of knowing if Solotech was the reason Ed had been out at the airport on the day he had run into Mr. Westside Gardeners, but all of a sudden that was a question to which Ralph very much wanted the answer. He was also curious as to just where Ed was living these days. He wondered if John Lydecker might share his curiosity on these 2 points, and decided to find out. He was passing the unpretentious double storefront, which housed George LaFord CPA on one side and Maritime Jewelry, we buy your old gold at top prices, on the other. When he was pulled out of his thoughts by a short, strangled bark, he looked up and saw Rosalie sitting on the sidewalk just outside the upper entrance of Strawford Park. The old dog was panting rapidly. Saliva drizzled off her lolling tongue, building up a dark puddle on the concrete between her paws. Her fur was stuck together in dark clumps, as if she had been running, and the faded blue bandana around her neck seemed to shiver with her rapid respiration. As Ralph looked at her, she gave another bark, this one closer to a yelp. Sorry about your phone, dude. He glanced across the street to see what she was barking at and saw nothing but the Buffy laundromat. There were a few women moving around inside, but Ralph found it impossible to believe Rosalie was barking at them. No one at all was currently passing on the sidewalk in front of the coin-op laundry. Ralph looked back and suddenly realized that Rosalie wasn't just sitting on the sidewalk, but crouching there, cowering there. She looked scared, almost to death. Until that moment, Ralph had never thought much about how eerily human the expressions and body language of dogs were. They grinned when they were happy, hung their heads when they were ashamed, registered anxiety in their eyes and tension in the set of their shoulders, all things that people did. And like people, they registered abject. total fear in every quivering line of the body. He looked across the street again at the spot where Rosalie's attention seemed focused, and once again saw nothing but the laundry and the empty sidewalk in front of it. Then suddenly he remembered Natalie, the exalted and revered baby, snatching at the gray-blue contrails his fingers left behind as he reached out with them to wipe the milk from her chin. To anyone else, she would have looked as if she were grabbing at nothing, the way babies always appeared to be grabbing at nothing, but Ralph had known better. Rosalie uttered a string of panicky yelps that grated on Ralph's ears like the sound of unoiled hinges. See what? Well, the auras, them of course, and maybe whatever Rosalie 369 Hun was looking at as well. Ralph already had a pretty good idea, the goose drank wine, of what it was, but he wanted to be sure. The question was how to do it. How does a person see in the first place? By looking, of course. Ralph looked at Rosalie, looked at her cheerfully, carefully, trying to see anything and everything there was to see. The faded pattern on the blue bandana, which served as her collar, the dusty clumps and tangles in her uncared-for coat, the sprinkle of gray round her long muzzle. After a few moments of this, she seemed to feel his gaze, for she turned and looked at him, and whined uneasily. As she did, Ralph felt something turn over in his mind. It felt like the starter motor of a car. There was a brief but very clear sense of being suddenly lighter, and then brightness flooded into the day. He had found his way back into the more vivid, more deeply textured world. He saw a murky membrane. It made him think of spoiled egg white swim into existence around Rosalie, and saw a dark gray balloon rising from her. His point of origin wasn't the skull, however. It had been the case in all the people Ralph had seen while in his heightened state of awareness. Rosalie's balloon rose from her muzzle. Now, you know the most essential difference between dogs and men, he thought. Their souls reside in different places. Doggy, come here. Ralph winced and drew back from that voice, which was like chalk squeaking on a blackboard. The heels of his palm rose most of the way to his ears before he realized that wouldn't help. He wasn't really hearing it with his ears, and the part that the voice hurt the worst was deep inside his head, where his hands could not reach. You fucking flea suitcase! You think I've got all day? Get your raggedy ass over here! Rosalie whined and winced and switched her gaze from Ralph back toward whatever she had been looking at before. She started to get up, then shrank back down on her haunches again. The bandana she wore was shaking hard, even harder than ever, and Ralph saw a dark crescent begin to spread around her left flank as her bladder let go. He looked across the street, and there was Doc Number 3 standing between the laundromat and the elderly apartment house next door. Doc Number 3 in his white smock. It was badly stained, Ralph noticed, as if he had been wearing it for a long time, and his midget-sized blue jeans. He still had McGovern's Panama on his head. The hat now appeared to balance on the creature's ears. It was so big for him that the top half of his head seemed submerged in it. He was grinning ferociously at the dog, and Ralph saw a double row of pointed white teeth, the teeth of a cannibal. In his left hand, he was holding something, which was either an old scalpel or a straight razor. Part of Ralph's mind tried to convince him that it was blood he saw on the blade, but he was pretty sure it was just rust. Doc Number 3 slipped the first two fingers of his right hand into the corners of his mouth and blew a piercing whistle that went through Ralph's head like a drill bit. Down the sidewalk, Rosalie flinched backward, then voiced her brief howl. Get your fucking ass over here, Rover. Do it now! Rosalie got up, tail between her legs, and began to slink toward the street. She whined as she went, and her fear had worsened her limp to the point where she was barely able to stagger. Her hind corners threatened to slide out from underneath her at each reluctant lurching step. Hey! Ralph only realized that he had yelled when he saw the small blue cloud float up in front of his face. It was etched with gossamer silver lines that made it look like a snowflake. The bald dwarf wheeled toward the sound of Ralph's shout, instinctively raising the weapon to which he held as he did. His expression was one of snarling surprise. Rosalie had stopped with her front paws in the gutter and was looking at Ralph with wide, anxious brown eyes. "What do you want, Shorts?" There was fury at being interrupted in that voice, fury at being challenged, but Ralph thought that there were other emotions underneath fear. He wished he could believe it. Perplexity and surprise seemed surer. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't used to being seen by the likes of Ralph, let alone challenged. "What's the matter, Short Time? Cat got your tongue, or have you already forgotten what you wanted?" "I want you to leave that dog alone." Ralph heard himself in two different ways. He was fairly sure he was speaking aloud, but the sound of his actual voice was distant and tinny, like music drifting up from a pair of Walkman headphones, which had been temporarily laid aside. Someone standing right beside him might have heard what he said, but Ralph knew the words would have sounded like a week-old breath gasp. Talk from a man who has just been gut-punched. Inside his head, however, he sounded as he hadn't in years, young, strong, and confident. Doc number 3 must have heard it that second way, for he recoiled momentarily, again raising his weapon. Ralph was now almost certain of it, that it was a scalpel. For a moment, as if in self-defense, then he seemed to regroup. He left the sidewalk and strode to the edge of Harris Avenue, standing on the leaf-drifted strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street. He reached at the waistband of his jeans, yanking it through the dirty smock, and started grimly at Ralph for several moments. Then he raised the rusty scalpel in the air and made an unpleasantly suggestive sawing gesture with it. "You can see me. Big deal. Don't poke your nose into what doesn't concern you, Short Time. The mutt belongs to me." The bald Doc turned back to the cringing dog. "I'm done fooling with you, Rover. Get over here, right now!" Rosalie gave Ralph a beseeching, despairing look and then began to cross the street. "I don't mess in with long-time business," old Dora had told him on the day he'd given him the book of Stephen Dobbin's poems. "I told you not to, either." Yes, he had. Yes, indeed. But Ralph had a feeling it was too late now. Even if it wasn't, he had no intention of leaving Rosalie to the unpleasant little gnome standing in front of the coin-up laundry across the street. Not if he could help it, that was. "Rosalie! Over here, girl! Heel!" Rosalie gave a single bark and trotted over to where Ralph stood. She placed herself behind his right leg and then sat down, panting and looking up at him. And here was another expression Ralph found that he could read with ease, one part relief, 2 parts gratitude. The face of Doc number 3 was twisted into a grimace of hate, so severe it was almost cartoonish. "Better send her across, Shorts. I'm warning you." "No. I'll fuck you over, Shorts. I'll fuck you over big time, and I'll fuck your friends over. Do you get me? Do you?" Ralph suddenly raised one hand to shoulder height, with the palm turned inward toward the side of his head, as if he meant to administer a karate chop. He brought it down and watched, amazed, as a tight blue wedge of light flew off the tips of his fingers and sliced across the 3 like a thrown spear. Doc number 3 ducked just in time, clapping one hand to McGovern's Panama to keep it from flying off. The blue wedge skimmed 2 or 3 inches over that small clutching hand and struck the front window of the Buffy. There it spread like some supernatural liquid, and for a moment the dusty glass became brilliant, perfect blue of today's sky. It faded after only a moment, and Ralph could see the woman inside the laundromat again, folding her clothes and loading their washers exactly as if nothing had happened. The bald dwarf straightened, rolled his hands into fists, and shook them at Ralph. Then he snatched McGovern's hat off his head stuck the brim in his mouth, and tore a bite out of it. As he performed the bizarre equivalent of Child's tantrum, the sun struck splinters of fire through the lobes of his small, neatly made ears. He spat out the chunk of splintery straw and then clapped the hat back on his head. "That dog was mine, Shorts. I was going to play with her. I guess maybe I'll have to play with you instead, huh? You and your asshole friends. Get out of here." "Cunt liquor. Fucked your mother and let your cunt." Ralph knew where he had heard that charming sentiment before. Had tipped Mew out of the airport in the summer of '92. It wasn't the sort of thing you forgot, and all at once he was terrified. What in God's name had he stumbled into? Section 5. Ralph lifted his head to the side of his head again, but something inside had changed. He could bring it down in that chopping gesture again, but he was almost positive that this time no bright blue flying wedge would result. The dog apparently didn't know he was being threatened with an empty gun, however. He shrank back, raising the hand holding the scalpel in a gesture. The grotesquely bitten hat slipped down over his eyes, and for a moment he looked like a stage melodrama version of Jack the Ripper. One who might have been working out pathologic inadequacies caused by extreme shortness. "Gonna get you for the Shorts. You wait. You just wait. No short timer runs the game on me." But for the time being, the little bold doctor had had enough. He wheeled around and ran into the weedy lane between the laundromat and the apartment house with his dirty, too-long smock flapping, snapping at the legs of his jeans. The brightness slipped out of the day with him. Ralph marked its passage to a large extent with senses he had never seen before or even suspected. He felt totally awake, totally energized, and almost exploding with delighted excitement. "I drove it off, by God! I drove the little son of a whore off." He had no idea what the creature in the white smock really was, but he knew he had saved Rosalie from it, and for now, that was enough. Nagging questions about his sanity might creep back in tomorrow morning as he sat in the wing chair looking down at the deserted street below. For the time being, he felt like $1,000,000. "You saw him, didn't you, Rosalie? You saw that nasty little—" He looked down, saw that Rosalie was no longer sitting by his heel, and looked up in time to see her limping into the park, head down, right leg slewing stiffly off to the side with every pained stride. "Rosalie!" he shouted. "Hey, girl!" And without really knowing why, except that they had just gone through something extraordinary together, Ralph started after her, first just jogging, then running, finally sprinting all out. He didn't sprint for long. A stitch that felt like a hot chrome needle buried itself into his left side, then spread rapidly across the left half of his chest wall. He stopped just inside the park, standing bent over at the intersection of two paths. Hands clamped on his legs just above the knees. Sweat ran into his eyes and stung like tears. He panted harshly, wondering if it was just the ordinary sort of stitch he remembered from the last lap of the mile run in high school track, or if this was how the onset of a fatal heart attack felt. After 30 or 40 seconds, the pain began to abate, so maybe it had just been a stitch after all. Still, it went a good piece towards supporting McGovern's thesis, didn't it? Let me tell you something, Ralph. At our age, mental illness is common. At our age, it's common as hell. Ralph didn't know if that was true or not, but he did know that the year that he had made All-State track was now more than half a century in the past. And sprinting after Rosalie the way he'd done was stupid and probably dangerous. If his heart had seized up, he supposed he wouldn't have been the first old guy to be punished with a coronary thrombosis for getting excited and forgetting that when 18 went, it went forever. The pain was almost gone and he was getting his wind back, but his legs still felt untrustworthy, as if they might unlock at the knees and spill him onto the gravel path without the slightest warning. Ralph lifted his head, looking for the nearest park bench, and saw something that made him forget stray dogs, shaky legs, even possible heart attacks. The nearest bench was 40 feet farther along the left-hand path, at the top of a gentle sloping hill. Lois Chase was sitting on the bench in her good blue fall coat. Her gloved hands were folded together in her lap, and she was sobbing as if her heart would break. Chapter 12, Section 1. What's wrong, Lois? She looked up at him, and the first thought to cross Ralph's mind was actually a memory. The play he had taken Carolyn to see at the Penobscot Theater in Bangor 8 or 9 years ago. Some of the characters in it had supposedly been dead, and their makeup had consisted of clown white grease paint, with dark circles around the eyes to give the impression of huge, empty sockets. His second thought was much simpler. Raccoon? She either saw some of his thoughts on his face or simply realized how she must look, because she turned away, fumbled briefly at the clasp of her purse, then simply raised her hands and used them to shield her face from his view. "Go away, Ralph, would you?" she asked in thick, choked voice. "I don't feel very well today." Under ordinary circumstances, Ralph would have done as she asked, hurrying away without looking back, feeling nothing but a vague shame at having come across her, with her mascara smeared and her defenses down. But these weren't ordinary circumstances, and Ralph decided he wasn't leaving. Not yet, anyway. He still retained some sort of strange lightness and still felt that the other world, that other Derry, was very close. And there was something else, something perfectly simple and straightforward. He hated to see Lois, whose happy nature he had never questioned, sitting there by herself and bawling her eyes out. "What's the matter, Lois?" I don't feel well," she cried. "Can't you just leave me alone?" Lois buried her face in her gloved hands. Her back shook, the sleeves of her blue coat trembled. And Ralph thought of how Rosalie had looked when the bald doctor had been yelling at her to get her ass across the street, miserable, scared to death. Ralph sat down next to Lois on the bench, slipped an arm around her, and pulled her to him. She came, but stiffly, as if her body were full of wires. "Don't you look at me!" she cried in the same wild voice. "Don't you dare! My makeup's a mess. I put it on, special for my son and daughter-in-law, and they came for breakfast, and we were going to spend the morning, and we'll have a nice time," Harold said. "But the reason they came, you see, the real reason—" Communication broke down in a fresh spat of weeping. Ralph groped in his back pocket, came up with a handkerchief, which was wrinkled but clean, and put it in one of Lois's hands. She took it without looking at him. "Go on," he said. "Scrub up a little if you want, although you don't look bad, Lois. Honest, you don't." "A little raccoony is all," he thought. He had begun to smile, and then the smile died. He remembered the day in September when he had set off for the Rite Aid to check out the over-counter sleep aids, and had encountered Bill and Lois standing outside the park talking about the doll-throwing demonstration which Ed had orchestrated at Woman Care. She had been clearly distressed that day. Ralph remembered thinking that she looked tired in spite of her excitement and concern, but she had also been close to beautiful. her considerable bosom heaving, her eyes flashing, her cheeks flushed with a maid's high color. That all but irresistible beauty was hardly more than a memory today, and her melting mascara, Lois Chase, looked like a sad and elderly clown, and Ralph felt a quick hot spark of fury for whatever or whoever had wrought the change. "No, ma'am, just a little smeary." Lois at last turned to face him. It clearly looked a lot as an effort with her rouge and eye makeup, now mostly in Ralph's handkerchief. "How bad am I?" she breathed. "Tell the truth, Ralph Roberts, or your eyes will cross." He bent forward and kissed one moist cheek. "Only lovely, Lois. You'll have to save Ethel for another day, I guess." She gave him an uncertain smile, and the upward movement of her face caused 2 fresh tears to spill from her eyes. Ralph took the crumpled handkerchief from her and gently wiped them away. "I'm so glad it was you that came along and not Bill," she told him. "I would have died of shame if Bill had seen me crying in public." Ralph looked around. He saw Rosalie, safe and sound, at the bottom of the hill. She was lying between 2 portesons that stood down there, her muzzle resting on one paw. But otherwise, this part of the empty park was empty. I think we've got the place pretty much to ourselves, at least for now," he said. "Oh, thank God for small favors." Lois took the handkerchief back and went up and worked out her makeup again, this time in a rather more businesslike manner. "Speaking of Bill, I stopped into the Red Apple on my way down here. That was before I got the filling for myself, and I started bawling my silly head off, and Sue said, 'You two had a big argument just a little while ago and yelling and everything, and right out in your front yard.'" "Nah, not a big deal," Ralph said, smiling uneasily. "Can I be nosy and ask, what was it about?" "Chess," Ralph said. It was the first thing to pop into his head. The Runway 3 tournament, Fade Chapin, as every year, only it really wasn't about anything. You know how it is. Sometimes people get out of bed on the wrong side and just grab the first excuse. "I wish that was all it was with me," Lois said. She opened her purse, managing to clasp effortlessly this time, and took out her compact. Then she sighed and stuffed it back into the bag again without opening it. "I can't. I know I'm being a baby, but I just can't." Ralph darted his hand into her purse. Before she could close it, removed the compact, opened it, and held the mirror up in front of her. "See? That's not so bad, is it?" "Anything, just put it away." He did. For a little while, Lois said nothing, but only sat and watched her hands fiddle restlessly with the clasp of her purse. He was about to prod her when she looked up at him with a pitiful expression of defiance. "It just so happens that you're not the only one who can't get a decent night's sleep, Ralph." "What are you talking about?" "Insomnia," she snapped. "I go to sleep at about the same time, and I always did, but I don't sleep. You don't sleep through anymore. And it's worse than that. I wake up earlier every morning, it seems." Ralph tried to remember if he had told Lois about the aspect of his own problem, and he didn't think he had. Why are you looking so surprised?" Lois asked. "You didn't really think that you were the only person in the world to ever have a sleepless night, did you?" "Well, of course not," Ralph responded, with some indignation. But hadn't it often felt as if he were the only person in the world to have that particular kind of sleepless night? Standing helplessly by his good sleep time was eroded minute by minute and quarter hour by quarter hour. It was like a weird variant of the Chinese water torture. "When did yours start?" he asked. A month or 2 before Carol died." "How much sleep are you getting?" "Only an hour a night since the start of October." Her voice was calm, but Ralph heard a tremor which might have been panic just below the surface. The way things are going, I'll have entirely quit sleeping by Christmas, and if that really happens, I don't know. Well, I'll survive. I'm barely surviving now. Ralph struggled for speech and asked the first question to come into his mind. Well, how come I've never seen your light? For the same reason I hardly see yours, I imagine, she said. I've been living in the same place for 35 years, and I don't need to turn on the lights to find my way around also. I like to keep my troubles to myself, and you keep turning on the lights at 2 in the morning, and sooner or later someone sees them, and it gets around, and then nosy birds start asking questions, and I don't like nosy bird questions, and I'm not one of those people who feel like they have to take an ad out in the paper every time they have a little constipation. Ralph burst out laughing. Lois looked at him in round-eyed perplexity for a moment, then joined in. His arm was still around her, or had it crept back into its own after he had taken it away? Ralph didn't know and didn't really care, and he hugged her tightly. This time she pressed against him easily. Those stiff little wires had gone out of her body. Ralph was glad. You're not laughing at me, Ralph, are you? No, absolutely not. She nodded, still smiling. That's all right. You never even saw me moving around in the living room, did you? No. That's because there's a street lamp in front of my house, but there's one in front of yours. I've seen you in that ratty old wing chair of yours many times, sitting and looking out and drinking tea. I always assumed I was the only one, he thought. And suddenly a question, both comic and embarrassing, popped into his head. How many times had she seen him sitting there and picking his nose or picking his crotch? Uh-oh. Either reading his mind or the color of his cheeks, Lois said, I really couldn't make out much more than your shape, and you were always wearing your robe, perfectly decent, so you never started doing anything you wouldn't want people to see you doing? I wouldn't have looked. I wasn't exactly raised in a barn, He smiled and bowed her hand. I do know that, Lois. It's just, a surprise to find out that while I was sitting there and watching the street, somebody was watching me. She fixed him with an enigmatic smile that might have said, Don't worry, Ralph. You were just another part of the scenery to me. He considered this smile for a moment, then groped his way back to the main point. So, what happened, Lois? Why were you sitting here and crying? Just sleeplessness? If that's what it is, I certainly sympathize. There's really no just about it, is there? Her smile slipped away, her gloved hands folded together again in her lap, and she looked somberly down at them. There are worse things than insomnia. Betrayal, for instance, especially when the people doing the betraying are the people that you love. Section 2. She felt quiet. Ralph didn't prompt her. He was looking down the hill at Rosalie, who appeared to be looking up at him. At both of them, maybe. Did you know we share the same doctor as well as the same problem, Ralph? You go to Litchfield too? Used to go to Litchfield. He was Carolyn's recommendation. I'll never go to him again, though. He and I are quits. Her upper lip drew back. Double-crossing son of a bitch! What happened? Well, I went along for the best part of a year, waiting for things to get better by themselves, and for nature to take her course, as they say. Not that I didn't try to help, nature along every now and then, we probably tried a lot of the same things. Honeycomb? Ralph asked, smiling again. He couldn't help it. What an amazing day this has been, he thought. What a perfectly amazing day. And it's not even 1 in the afternoon yet. Honeycomb? What about it? Does that help? No, Ralph said, grinning more widely than ever. Doesn't help a bit, but it tastes wonderful. I must admit it does. After my mom was killed by a drunk driver and my dad sent us to our grandparents for a visit and then never sent for us again. We used to get honey, and then my granny had honeycomb. It was the most wonderful thing I've ever eaten, the most beautiful candy in the world. So I want to have my own honey cubes. I say honey cubes, like they're chickens, but... She laughed and squeezed his bare left hand in both of her gloved ones, and Ralph squeezed back. You never went to see Dr. Litchfield about it, did you, Ralph? Nope, made an appointment once, but canceled it. Did you put it off because you didn't trust him? Because you felt he missed the boat on Carolyn? Ralph looked at her, surprised. Never mind, Lois said. I had no right to ask that. No, it's okay. I guess I'm just surprised to hear the idea from someone else that he might have misdiagnosed her. Lois's pretty eyes flashed. It crossed all our minds, Bill. Bill used to say that he couldn't believe you didn't have that fumble-fingered bastard in district court the day after Carolyn's funeral. Of course, back then, I was on the other side of the fence, defending Litchfield like mad. Did you ever think of suing him? No, I'm 70, and I don't want to spend whatever time I have left flogging a malpractice suit. Besides, would it bring Carolyn back? She shook her head. Ralph said, What happened to Carolyn was the reason I didn't go see him, though. I guess it was, at least, I don't know. I just couldn't seem to trust him, or maybe... I don't know. No, he didn't really know. That was the devil of it. All he knew, for sure, was that he had canceled the appointment with Dr. Litchfield, as he had canceled his appointment with James Roy Hahn, known in some quarters as the Pin Sticker Man. That latter appointment had been scratched on the advice of 92 or 3-year-old man who could probably no longer remember his own middle name. His mind slipped, and the book Old Boar had given him, and the poem Old Boar had quoted from Pursuit. It had been called, and Ralph couldn't seem to get it out of his head, especially the part where the poet talked about all the things he saw falling away behind him, the unread books, the untold jokes, the trips that would never be taken. Ralph? Are you there? Yeah, I'm here. I'm just thinking about Litchfield, wondering why he canceled that appointment. She patted his hand. Just be glad you did. I kept mine. Well, tell me. Lois shrugged. When I got so bad, I felt like I couldn't stand it anymore. I went to him and I told him everything. I thought he'd give me a prescription for sleeping pills, but he said he couldn't even do that. I sometimes have an irregular heartbeat, and sleeping pills can make that worse. When did you see him? Early last week. Then yesterday, my son Harold called me out of the clear blue sky and said he and Janet wanted to take me out for breakfast. Nonsense, I said. I can still get around the kitchen if you're coming all the way down here from Bangor. I said, I'll get up and I'll make a nice little feed for you. And that's the end of it. Then after you want to take me out, I was thinking of the mall, because I always like to go out there. Why, that would be fine. That's just what I said. She turned to Ralph with a smile, and a smile that was small and bitter and fierce. It never occurred to me to wonder why both of them were coming to see me on a weekday, and when both of them have jobs, and they must really love their jobs because they're about all they ever talk about. just thought how sweet of them it was, how thoughtful. And I put out a special effort to look nice and do everything right so Janet wouldn't suspect I was having a problem. I think that rankles most of all. Silly old Lois. Or Lois, as Bill always says. Don't look so surprised, Ralph. Of course, I knew about that. Did you think that I fell off a stump just yesterday? And he's right. I am foolish, and I am silly, but that doesn't mean I don't hurt just like anyone else, and I'm taken advantage of. She was beginning to cry again. Of course it doesn't, Ralph said, and patted her hand. You would have laughed if you'd seen me, she said, baking fresh squash muffins at 4 o'clock in the morning and slicing mushrooms for an Italian omelet at 4:15 and starting in with the makeup at 4:30, just to be sure, absolutely sure that Jen wouldn't get going with that. Are you sure you feel all right, Mother Louise? Stuff, but I hate it when she starts in with that crap, and do you know what, Ralph? She knew what was wrong with me all the time. They both did. So I guess the laugh was on me, wasn't it? Ralph thought he had been following closely, but apparently he had lost her on one of the turns. Knew? How could they know? Because Litchfield told them. She shouted, her face twisted. Again, but this time it was not hurt or sorrow. Ralph saw there but a terrible, refueled rage. That tattling son of a bitch called my son on the telephone and told him everything! Ralph was dumbfounded. Lois, they can't do that, he said, when he finally found his voice again. The doctor-patient relationship is, well, it's privileged. Your son would know all about it, and because he's a lawyer and the same thing applies to them, doctors can't tell anyone what their patients tell them unless the patient... Oh, Jesus, Lois said, rolling her eyes. Crippled wheelchair Jesus. What world are you living in, Ralph? Fellows like Litchfield do whatever they think and want. And know is right. Or think they know is right. I guess I knew that all along, which makes me double stupid for going to him at all. Carl Litchfield is a vain, arrogant man who cares more about how he looks in his suspenders and designer shirts than he does about his patients. Dang, didn't realize how far we were in time. I got caught up in this damn book. Anyways, we gotta go to our second music break. On this break, we have Miss Mia Savage with her band Antidote for Savages. If you don't know them, I would implore you to check them out on, I believe it's Instagram. She's going to be singing to Your Grave, Bear Me in Heaven, Not a Phase in the Bottom Line. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride, and we can change it anytime we want.
It's all the choice. No network, no work, no job, no savings or money.
Just a choice right now between fear and love. Choice right now between fear and love.
There's a choice right now between fear and love. I've heard that guy say that several different times, but just this once it actually struck me pretty hard. Between fear and love. And like I was saying earlier, like, these drone things, these AI things, these whatever the crap is happening right now, is this us from the future? Is this AI? Supposedly AI is already messing with our timeline? Maybe that's perhaps why the Mandela effect is happening, but I do not know of which I speak at this very moment. But I have a video to share with you, and generally it's our friend James the Floor from the Impossible channel, but it's going to be James. Let me go back and make sure. Okay, here we go. James the Floor. Oh my gosh. You got to check this out.
So I decided to make an update on this situation. Yesterday night, I uploaded this video that you're watching right now, and I had strange technical issues. Let's just put it like that.
Isn't that weird?
So I am uploading this video today once again on Sunday, and I, well, took the opportunity to add a few things. So if you watched this video yesterday by any chance, you might want to watch it again. So we're going to be taking a look into some very interesting things. Apparently these drones are flying over other countries too. It's not just the US. But what does this mean? We're also going to be taking a look into certain leaks that supposedly explain what these drones are. Finally, there's also a bunch of videos of people shooting these drones down. And just 9 hours ago in Phoenix, what appears to be one of these UFOs taking down a drone.
He killed it. It's like, no.
We also have a bunch of strange interferences happening all over the US, and people are freaking out over it.
Because when I had like my radio on. No what?
Yeah, he thought it was a car party.
It also seems like whatever these things are, they're now in Washington.
I'm telling you, they're not moving.
They're near the Pentagon.
And it's not just in Washington.
It's not freaking weird. Look at that.
I also thought it was a good idea to map the new drone sightings that are happening right now that we're going to be seeing in this video and compare it to the mysterious orbs or UFOs. Check if it's possibly the same thing and find a possible connection. Are we seeing an alien invasion? A fake alien invasion, a distraction? Or is it something else, something possibly far more sinister? So let's start with this picture of a drone that was captured at night. This was posted by Cyclops on Twitter, and people are saying that this looks like one of them, but there are also others saying that this is a helicopter. I'm not sure, so if you have
I don't think so.
any idea, leave a comment. There's also
does
this
make
very
sound, but
clear
it's
video
not
of one of
Shabbat.
these orbs, not the drones.
Oh, yes. I saw one like that, but it looks like liquid fire.
Apparently these are the UFOs and orbs that we're seeing hovering over the ocean.
See how it's going in a clockwise
So when
manner?
all of this started happening,
Yes.
there were a bunch of
That's
people
what I saw,
tracking
but it
planes and
looked like
finding out
fire.
that these objects are possibly coming from the
Orange,
ocean.
red,
Then now,
yellow. Orange, red,
there's a
yellow,
sheriff
like all mixed together.
that is using his infrared drone, I think this is in New Jersey, to capture these objects coming out of the water, and this is what he caught.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man, now I'm surrounded.
So this is his drone monitor, and in it you can see him enabling the infrared and recording what's supposed to be a bunch of lights hovering over the coastline.
In the air?
Was that right over the water? What was that?
Now you can imagine that everyone is tense with this situation. You might be
Yes.
too. And apparently no one knows what they are, but they say that they are not a threat. So what apparently started happening is a couple of people are shooting these things down, or trying to. But things are not what they seem.
This one I saw is fictitious. This is not
So some people are
actually
saying
a
the
real
bullets
video.
are curving because he's
Because
using
it's
an air gun.
But no.
I don't think that's a very safe thing to
It's
do
the
though.
same freaking video.
So I actually went and tried to find the original source of the video, and I found this. Confirmed. The video
Okay.
of Patriot shooting
Yes.
the drone is fake. The original video was recorded December
Hopefully he's
4th,
got
and
it.
there are no gunshots.
Oh.
So let's
It's
take a
added
look at
in.
this.
Mysterious drones in South Jersey. They're down here now.
Oh wow, it was fake. Huh.
Mysterious drones.
They just wish they were shooting at that.
So apparently this
But I
is
did
the
see one
original
of
video,
these
and in it you
shooting
can
at
see there is no one
something
shooting it.
on the ground. Some sort of threat? I
So
don't
the
know.
shots were added. It's like someone is trying to
Yes.
create a narrative with these videos, with these fake videos. But I wonder
Yes.
what narrative. And then there's also this video that went viral, and there's a lot of people going
Mind
bonkers over
control.
this.
I saw something like this, but it wasn't going up, it was going down. Down
That thing
towards
is
the ground.
completely stationary shooting.
The thing is, the video is very low in quality. There are no others like this one, and it's 12 seconds long. It's too short. Now, if this were to be happening, and I'm not saying it isn't, but if this were to be happening, there should be dozens of videos like this one, and there aren't. Let's search for drone shooting down. Once again, the same video. This guy shooting at the drone. So yeah, no other videos of drones shooting down. Weird, isn't it? What I did find, however, while searching for this, was that a drone supposedly crashed.
Yeah, they're like,
And when they went
there's
to retrieve
nothing to
it,
see
they
here.
didn't find.
Let's go back. Could we? I don't know. Let's continue. See if they go back to it
It's
because
like it's already being covered
they're
up.
looking
Wait a minute,
at
didn't I see
something.
like
And it
this on
started
Reddit
the
just
night
a few days
before,
ago?
then went into the
think I
next
did.
day. Hi. Are you still there? If it didn't happen,
Here
you
you
would have
go.
been gone.
County
Everybody's just like
What was
scratching their
the exact
heads.
call? This wasn't actually saw it crash or heard it crash? Vertical drone fell out of the sky by the power lines behind their house.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10 more showed up.
Wow.
Maybe number 8, Logan. 22166, the county will be clear. Just change us to a welfare check.
So it does seem like it's being covered up. The question is why? Is it
I don't know,
procedure? Is it some sort of secret project? Or is there something sinister going on? But before we get to the supposed leaks that might actually explain what's happening, let's take a look at some of the most recent drone sightings, including one of these supposed UFOs that took down one of these drones in Phoenix. And let's map this and try to find a connection.
It's on a
So we
mission.
got them in Germany. And this video supposedly in China. I'm not sure if this is the real deal,
We just don't hear it because the news is controlled. Even Facebook, other things are controlled. Supposedly that's a satellite. I don't know. Maybe certain bars get hotter before other ones.
Looks like a meteor shower. Someone says. Someone also says space train coming down.
Yeah,
the other
but
says that's not
else.
China. I was asking myself that also. That's clearly something entering Earth's atmosphere. So it seems that some people think that this China video might be something else, like a satellite re-entering orbit, or being blown down or something like that, which is strange. Now, in Phoenix, Arizona, in a video uploaded by Courtless 9 hours ago, we can see what appears to be one of these UFOs or orbs taking down a drone, possibly one of ours. Check this out.
Something's going up real fast.
Here goes drone, trying to check out this UFO. What's happening? Who the crap are you? You little do.
That could be a drone. I don't know what the hell that is. But that is quick. There's only one remaining right now. Whatever that green flashing one is, he moved quick around it to get it. Super quick. He's like right on it.
Isn't it weird? This is unnatural.
Ooh, that, whatever it was.
Yeah, what the crap, dude? What? This 2023. Yeah.
Crap.
Freaking weird, huh?
We now have these drones flying over Manhattan and New York City, which is, by the way, leaving a lot of people very tense.
Brown chicken, brown cow.
It doesn't look like
Brown
drones, does
chicken,
it?
brown.
It looks like whatever these things are over Manhattan, it's the same thing as the mysterious UFOs or orbs that began appearing over the ocean. And it's quite different from this next video that was also seen in New York, but these are clearly drones.
Clearly.
Apparently on October 29th, they were over Vietnam, and the videos are only surfacing now. It could just be that it's fake, but it doesn't look like it. Check this out.
Look at that.
Vật thể vai không xác định.
This is not a drone. This is a craft. Reminds me of the one from Flight of
This
the
is
Navigator.
one of them in San Jose, California.
I love that movie.
Oh, there's the drone in San Jose, California. There they are.
Wasn't there some sort of spaceship?
So this happened in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania on November 21st. Look at that. Quite fast, isn't it? Clearly not a plane.
Very fast. Magnavox.
Look at that. There's also now apparently a video of these things flying over Washington.
I'm telling you, they're not moving.
The Pentagon. Near the White House. Now they're like,
they're hovering.
Hey, we've been in New Jersey, we've been in New York, we've been all these other different places, like California, Connecticut.
Yeah, that's an airplane.
We're going to be there by the White House. We're going to be above the Pentagon where they told all those lies.
The one to the right, or over here, or over here. That's an airplane. Okay.
Over there is, but look at that one.
And I'm so saying, like when you look to the left of the Capitol, those are not moving.
Yeah, they're not. They're stationary.
I'm telling you.
You got them in Sacramento, California.
Oh my God. I'm telling you. Yes.
This is a video that was posted 3 days ago, and this is a mystery drone that emerges out of the ocean.
And it's like, if it weren't for light pollution, you know, you'd see all the stars, but you can't. Because there's smog. There's other things like that. Light pollution. All of a sudden, you see these drones or orbs or whatever the crack they are, it's a combination of both.
And heads towards Oyster Creek nuclear plant on December 11th.
Right over my head.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to be bothered by a spotlight.
They're taking pictures. Oh my God, look at that.
So this was in Houston, Texas.
I have pictures like that. Okay, holy shit. Okay, did you see that dash? It's like lasers being fired. I took pictures of that. I tried to send this to my friend who I was on her show recently. And, oh, you don't see where it's coming from, but you see lasers going ching, ching, ching this way. Ching, ching down, ching, ching, ching this way. What are they shooting at? What are they trying to kill? Or are they seeding? I don't know. What do you think? And I'll try to share this on Tessa Nicole Thomas Peterson or Paradox Media or Four Corners Paranormal Investigations, because yeah, this shit is crazy.
Let's map these guys out. We got these things over Houston, Texas. Argentina.
You should be a stenographer,
Now
dude.
also in Vietnam. This is crazy. So the question is, are the drones and the UFOs the same thing? Are they coming from the ocean? So let's map these new drone sightings and try to find out.
Because there are drones and this alien orb things.
So these are the drone sightings that we have for now. And it seems that the pattern I see here is that they're very close to the coastline. So it might just be that whatever these drones are, they are indeed coming from the ocean. Possibly from whatever these UFOs are. Which makes things really weird.
Someone called the cops on these lights.
It's a red light and then there's a big bright light.
They're absorbing around it.
So let's quickly take a look at some of the leaks that are showing up all over Reddit, Twitter, 4chan of what's supposed to be an explanation to these drones. Let's see if it makes sense and helps us find out what's really going on. So this is the first leak. It happened in 2023 on 4chan. And this guy, way before all this started happening in April 2023, said that these drones are UFOs. They come from the ocean, from a mobile construction facility, and it's been there for 100 years or even longer.
Yeah. Which means, shut the fuck up.
Now this leak kind of makes sense when it comes to these drones possibly being UFOs. Because when people try to fly their drones close to these things, they can't.
My drone does not want to go up with these things around.
It's charged, everything.
What is going on?
They're trying to get a heat signature from these things, they can't.
Nope.
Everything points to the fact that whatever these things are, its technology is way more advanced than ours. There's this leak over here. I'm not going to show it entirely because I don't think I can here on YouTube. But this guy says that the drones are not ETs or Iranian or anything like that. They're sniffers from us. And they're desperately trying to find gamma ray emission. And that would mean the things we see in movies. So I don't think that's the real deal. But it does kind of make sense. The reason why maybe things are being kept quiet. And then, I don't know if this is real, but it was posted to Reddit a day ago. An intelligence bulletin that states that when a downed or landed drone is found, it should not be approached. It says, here number 7, request the nearest bomb squad. So why? Then we got this leak over here that happened just recently on Reddit. This guy says he knows what the operating drones are. And he goes on to explain how he's been a 25-year radar operator for a major agency. So the drones are part of a military drill, he says, being conducted by Space Force. Everything is on a need-to-know basis, which is why there's so much confusion. What gets me concerned, and why I had to make this post, is that something big is about to go down. I happen to know that there are additional full lockout drills that are scheduled to take place between now and Christmas Eve. He believes that this is a big show that someone's putting out. In other words, a fake alien invasion. So he says that in conjunction with all that's happening, there are also...
What? Oh my goodness. Well, I pressed one freaking button and this is what happens right now. James the Floor, he's on to something. And he's been doing this channel. This is impossible. This is impossible. Man, I can't believe he was just on there and then I killed it. One push of a button. Use in a moment, por favor. I will get this fixed. I got to go to my inbox. Oh my. Are you serious? Okay. Found it. What? Come on. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Okay, out of control. Let's go. Right. Then I'm going to have to fast forward because we went through all this ish anyways. Hold on. I'm going to present. Share.
So I decided to make an update on this situation. Yesterday night, I uploaded this video that you're watching right now, and I had strange...
Oh, yeah. I think that's pretty good right there.
There's also another thing. These drones, we don't know if they are ours or not. They don't seem to be the same thing as the UFOs or the orbs. They seem to be different things. So it could just be that the UFOs are coming from the ocean, possibly from very ancient constructions that some people believe it to be alien in origin. And there is evidence on Google Earth, and they have recently been scrubbed, like this video for instance in Malibu, I think, California. You can see what looks like an alien base or some sort of construction, and this has been mentioned by the alien community for a while now, and it has been completely scrubbed. There's also this other picture on Google Earth. This is in Antarctica, if I'm not mistaken. It looks like some sort of entrance or UFO, downed UFO. And there's also this picture here of a pyramid that was found in Antarctica. You could actually search for it on Google Earth. You cannot find it anymore. So it could just be that whatever's going on, the drones are our technology. And they're surveying for some sort of gamma ray emission. That kind of makes sense. And we also have these UFOs that are coming from the ocean that are also surveilling close to nuclear power plants for some mysterious reason. And now we have a bunch of videos popping up all over social media of people reporting these strange interferences.
Okay, legit, I had to like pull over and like pull this back up because I thought maybe it's a car party, right? There's a bunch of like those weird looking Tesla vehicles over there, and I thought maybe it's like a car club. They're just all meeting up, and it's a Thursday night. I just want to show you, but there's no one over there. Look at this. I'm gonna zoom in just so you. But the video that I heard was it was like this girl who was saying like, "Have you seen lights flickering or anything like that?" And then there was a guy in Jersey who was like, "Yeah."
YouTube, Facebook, and isn't that weird? Could you imagine you're turning your stereo on and you hear this? Reminds me, oh my gosh, of that Will Smith punched an alien in the face, then dragging it by its dreads or whatever the crap that was. This reminds me of that. This is not natural. After this video, I have another one.
What the
I'm going to share because, yeah, keep changing it. Have you heard that? For stereo interference? Have you heard that?
So whatever these things are, they're causing interferences in other people's drones, in cars, and electronic equipment. There's also this video coming in from Aaron Parnas1 on TikTok. He's talking about what's going on in New York.
Dr. Kathy Hochul of New York is sounding the alarms over the presence of the mysterious drones after last night. According to her, the drones' presence shut down runways at a local airport in New York. The runways were shut down for about 1 hour at Stewart Airfield in Orange County, New York.
So I was thinking, if these drones are causing interferences in our own equipment, electronic equipment, they're shutting down airports, why would it be ours? This is either to stage a fake alien invasion, like some theorize, or it's possibly from someone or something else. Possibly.
Again, they're saying Project Moonbeam or whatever. Like, this shit is not real. This shit is real. Sorry. Please continue. Don't go away.
Extraterrestrial. Or some other country. I don't know.
It's
weird, though, to think about the fact that they are causing these interferences and shutting down airports. It kind of makes me remember a line from a very good movie. And I guess it was Signs or something like that. Let me just play a snippet so you know what I'm talking about.
I've had 2 separate folks tell me there have been strangers around these parts last couple nights. Nobody's been hurt, mind you. And that's the giveaway. It's called probing. You send out a reconnaissance group. Very small. Check things out. Make sure things are all clear.
Clear for what?
Clear for what?
For the rest of them.
Yeah. Creepy, isn't it? So what do we know for now? We know that a woman supposedly had contact with these beings. In my last video I posted about this. You should watch it. No one knows if this is the real deal or not. We know that one of these orbs or UFOs took down a drone, possibly one of our drones, in Phoenix 9 hours ago.
Oh, no.
We also have people trying to track these things down and sometimes being unable to. We're also experiencing these interferences all over the US, and airports are being shut down because of these objects. And we don't know if the drones and the UFOs are actually the same thing. There's a few possibilities. Either these things are possibly connected and they're scanning for something before this something happens, like they supposedly did in the past, or they're here to show themselves. And there's another possibility that these drones are actually here to mask the presence of these UFOs. Maybe they're ours, and they're trying to mask their presence for some reason. You tell me what you think, leave a comment, and smash that like button and that notification button for more videos.
Smash that like button. Okay, so thank you, James DeFlora, for sharing that with us, because that was damn amazing. But there's one more that I have, and this was from the news. Yes, it's MSNBC or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. But let me get over here and go to my Gmail. So everybody's been like, scoff. Like, this is not really happening. This is really happening. So, no foreign involvement found in drone investigation so far. But there's something else. And, like, when I first saw this picture, I'm like, Jeffrey Bezos. Like, it looked like a freaking Jeffrey Bezos to me. But I'm find out it's not. It's a clone or wannabe or whatever the crack you want to call it. Are you guys ready for this one? Like, it's not long. It's a short one, but oh my god, you gotta check this out. Thoroughly. What? Where the crick is my StreamYard? Uh-oh. Sorry guys, I don't even know what the crack happened just then. What the crack just happened? I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to present again. I guess I might have hit the wrong button. I do not know this of which I speak, but here we go. Gotta check this ish out. Seriously. This is pretty damn badass, I must tell you.
In September of 2023, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, changed the rules so that drones could fly at night. And that may be one of the reasons why now people are seeing more drones than they did before, especially from dawn to dusk. And so that is the reality. But I want to assure the American public that we are on it. We are working in close coordination with state and local authorities. And it is critical, as we all have said for a number of years, that we need from Congress additional authorities to address the drone situation. Our authorities currently are limited, and they are set to expire. We need them extended and expanded.
I'm telling you guys, he looks like Jeffrey Bezos.
That are flying around. 2 there are flying, one's hovering.
We know of no foreign involvement with respect to the sightings in the Northeast, and we are vigilant in investigating this matter, the Department of Homeland Security, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the lead.
Isn't that weird? So stinking weird. What do you guys think? I don't know. Like, this ish to me, freaking weird for sure. Okay, what's happening now? Make it smaller. Oh no. I lost my string yardagans. Not string yardagans. Oh no, oh no. Let's go, let's go. Weird. Anyways, can you hear me now? It's weird, these different things that are happening, even with the UAPs, UFOs, whatever the crap you want to call it. People are having different random, strange, technological things happening. Yeah, what do you guys think about those videos I shared? Like, that to me was pretty damn epic. What do you guys think? We've been talking about the end of time since the beginning of time. Where are we right now? What are we doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I'm saving whatever I can. And people are like, oh, well, that's from the good old days, the Great Depression, etc., etc. Like, that rubbed off on you from your grandparents. Perhaps. I'm kind of a hoarder, but that's important shit. Like, I learned a long time ago to throw away my old milk. I don't need that shit. Clothes, food, water, whatever you can bundle and leave behind is very, very important right now. Things are about to happen, guys, and it is pretty damn crazy. What do we do? Like, I buy chickens, I feed them. The feed costs more than buying eggs at the market anyways, but it's worth it. And yes, I've lost a few. It could be foxes or owls or whatever the crack is out there killing my chickens. I have 3 that have been killed. It was Carol. All that was left was her head. Feathers scattered. The rest of them, the other 2, Black Betty and then Mango, You don't see a body, but you see feathers. But no, to me, like, I have meat, I have chickens, I have dogs, I have cats, I have lots of things. And it sounds really disgusting when you say it, but at the same time, if you're starving, do you really care if that's your pet? I would say a prayer, little blessings over my little friend there. Then what? Then what? Anyways, I just want to say thank you so much again for being my friend and hanging out with me on late night in the Rockies. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you to all of my friends on We Are Paradox Media's Facebook, KPNL Radio, Twitter, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, wherever the heck you're listening. Beyond the Omniverse tonight. I'm so glad we're here. So freaking excited. So glad that I'm not alone, because I hate being alone, but I just gotta say, don't forget, you guys, we're on this together. Together, we can make the world a bit better, and together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. Until next time, night-night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your week and Christmas season and Christmas shopping and whatever else you gotta do to get through the times. I will see you back here. Same crazy time, same crazy place. But yeah, good luck on all your endeavors as far as Christmas shopping goes.